Slaanesh's campaign gameplay is very on brand with the god himself. The focus is on twisting other factions to your will with the gifts of Slaanesh and seduction in diplomacy as well as battle. Their powerful mechanics allow them to manipulate other factions and their own to get whatever it is that you need out of them. Now let's first go over the pros and cons of the faction's campaign gameplay. First of all, the pros. Their seduction allows them to engage in diplomacy more than any other Chaos faction, and even broker peace between themselves and other non-Chaos factions. The seduction of other factions' units in battles also allows them to turn the tide of some which would otherwise be impossible to win, as long as they have the gold to fund this. And the gifts of Slaanesh punish your enemies for daring to come close to your heroes or lose to you in battle, making a comeback that much harder to obtain. As for the cons, starting so close to Skarbrand can be a little scary, since he is just such a tank right out of the gate. With so many things in the faction requiring devotees, it can become a hassle to generate and decide where to spend them, especially early on. And the corner location can be very defendable, but if enemies all come for you at once, you're essentially trapped in a corner if you aren't able to defend yourself properly. So far, Slaanesh only has one faction playable, the Seducers of Slaanesh. Their faction leader is Nakari, and for their faction effects, they gain plus 20 diplomatic relations with all factions and plus 50% tribute income from vassals. As for Lord effects, Nakari grants plus 50% XP gained each time you fight a new faction in battle, minus 25% to the cost of seducing units, and minus 4 enemy leadership locally. This faction starts out in the Palace of Ruin, and their starting army gains 2 Demonettes, Marauder Hellscourgers, 2 Marauders, Hellflayers, Hellstriders, and Fiends. For their climate preferences, suitable, wasteland, chaotic wasteland, temperate island and savanna are suitable, magical forest, mountain and jungle are unpleasant, and ocean and desert are uninhabitable. Since you start in the northwest corner of the map, you can expand easily to the southeast. Well, as easily as you can when Skarbrand is right on your doorstep. Once you take him out, you can continue east to take over all of the Chaos Wastes if you so desire. You could also head south into Norska and then the Demons of Chaos lands, or skip right over them and get into Kislev and the Empire of Man. Your capital is in a really defensive location with your back to the wall, so if anyone comes for you, as long as you have armies and garrisons, you should have no problem sending them packing long before they reach your capital. Now we come to the faction mechanics, and Slaanesh has quite a lot of them. First up we have the gifts of Slaanesh. Encounters with the god rarely end without side effects. Those that lose in battle or are victims of successful hero actions are gifted with various effects from the Lord of Excess. These effects vary in each case, but they always spread Slaanesh corruption wherever the affected characters go, generate devotees, and grant line of sight. Next we have devotees, and these are a currency that fuel pretty much all of your faction mechanics. They are earned from many sources. Buildings can provide them, post-battle captives, certain events, vassalizing factions, raiding, looting and sacking settlements, creating and developing cults, imparting the gifts of Slaanesh on enemies, and using the unholy manifestations. They are then spent on a number of different mechanics and events. Pleasurable acts can be enacted in any province you own at least one settlement in, and they offer 3 sets of powerful effects. Pleasure Party grants 50 growth and 5 control for 10 turns. Pleasure Hunt grants 20 control, minus 25% recruitment cost, and plus 2 recruit rank for 5 turns. And Pleasure Arena grants 20% income from all buildings. Each of the 3 costs various amounts of devotees, gold, and control, and they're all worth using at different stages of your campaign and of course your province's life cycle. You can also spend devotees on establishing and developing cults and cult buildings, and you can also raise disciple armies. These can be summoned next to any friendly army in an area with 25 or more Slaanesh corruption. They contain random units of similar power to the host army, and they cannot recruit or replenish, and once they are gone, they aren't coming back. Our next mechanic is Seduction, and it actually has 2 parts. The first is the battle version. Before battles, Slaanesh armies have the ability to seduce units from the enemy army to join them in battle. You only have a small budget which can be increased via research and skills, and once the battle is over, the units are returned to the army if it wasn't destroyed. Seduction also has a place in campaign diplomacy. Any human, elf or beastman faction that interacts with Slaanesh is put under his seductive influence. You can increase this influence via many methods: imparting the gifts of Slaanesh, battling these factions, placing cults in their lands, heavily corrupting their lands with Slaaneshi corruption, and engaging in diplomacy with them. By increasing this influence, you can unlock various treaties such as non-aggression pacts and even trade agreements, so you actually have the option of not fighting every non-chaos faction in the world, which is rare. If the influence reaches max, then you can spend devotees to vassalize the faction instantly. This of course gains you some passive income as well as devotees, and you can then force the faction to then help you in your battles. As with all the 4 factions of Chaos, unholy manifestations are unlocked for Slaanesh as you spread more of your corruption throughout the world. Pain for Pleasure is unlocked from the start and grants plus 6% campaign move range, speed, weapon strength and charge bonus to the target army for 6 turns at the cost of 6% of all the unit's HP paid up front. Carnival of the Damned requires 1000 corruption and grants 100 devotees and minus 60 growth in the local enemy province at the cost of the target army having movement disabled for 2 turns. Infernal Martyrdom requires 2000 corruption and grants 100% to the Seduce unit's budget, plus 8 Slaanesh corruption to the target army for 4 turns. And finally, Cult Uprising requires 3000 corruption and spawns disciple armies near the target army every turn for 5 turns, whilst disabling movement range for that target army. Alongside this, Slaanesh also takes part in the Great Game. All the Chaos factions are a part of this, and they are constantly competing to spread their corruption the most throughout the world. Every 5 turns, the faction in the lead gains bonuses to their unholy manifestations. Pain for Pleasure gains 12% campaign move range, speed, weapon strength and charge bonus for the target army for 6 turns at the cost of 6% of the unit's HP. Carnival of the Damned now provides 200 devotees and minus 120 growth in the local enemy province at the cost of the target army having its movement disabled for 2 turns. Infernal Martyrdom increases the Seduce unit's budget by 150% and 12 Slaanesh corruption on the target army for 4 turns. And finally, Cult Uprising spawns disciple armies near the target army every turn for 7 turns, whilst disabling movement for the target army. And the final mechanic is of course the cults. Like all the other branches of Chaos, Slaanesh can spawn cults around the world by spreading corruption in foreign territories, and you can also spend devotees to create up to 3 cults in human or elf-owned settlements every 10 turns, and you can also build them using cultists on settlements. In these cults you can build one of 4 buildings. Dens grant 5 devotees per turn, 4 seductive influence per turn with the settlement owner, and minus 10% to seduce units cost locally. Parlors grants temporary diplomatic relations bonus with the settlement owner, 3 seductive influence per turn, and an extra 3 when the income is 300 or more. Ateliers summon cultists near the settlement and increase capacity by 1, as well as granting 3 seductive influence per turn when control is above 50. And finally, Salons summon a disciple army near the settlement at the cost of destroying the cult. We now come to the Lord's skills. First up we have Nakari, which is the only legendary Lord. He's a standard blue tree with Route Marcher, recruitment cost reduction, increases the casualties captured post-battle, income from raiding, and Slaanesh corruption. You can then of course go into Lightning Strike, upkeep reduction, attrition reduction, and increases to the Seduction budget. And as usual, you want to pick up Renowned and Feared. The red line grants buffs to all units in the faction to pick up some skills for the late game, and you'll be able to push your armies even further. You can grab spells from the lore of Slaanesh, and you absolutely should since it's a great lore and brings you even more value to this very powerful lord. The yellow tree will buff him even further in combat, so if you are trying to make a one-man army, then spend some extra time here. The Willing Prey line is unique to him and contains powerful skills for power in combat, diplomacy, some abilities in combat, and even more seduction budget. And finally, the top row has buffs versus Khorne and elves, as well as missile resist. The Heralds of Slaanesh are our only choice for non-legendary recruitable lords. They come in 2 flavours, the Lore of Slaanesh or the Lore of Shadows, and their skill tree is rather similar to Nakari. You got the same blue tree with Route Marcher, recruitment cost reduction, casualties captured post-battle, income from raiding, and Slaanesh corruption, Lightning Strike, upkeep reduction, attrition reduction, and increases to the Seduction budget, as well as Renown and Feared. Exact same red tree with buffs to all units, specs them up for the late game, and you'll be just fine. Pick up any spells you want from your chosen lore, always worth doing to get the most value out of your lords. The Yellow Tree of course has buffs for the Lord themselves in combat, this will be more useful later, so I won't really spend too much time in it early on. You can also choose from one of the 3 Locust skills upon reaching level 13, and you can choose from one of their 3 mounts, the Steeds of Slaanesh, the Seeker Chariots, or the Exalted Seeker Chariots, all 3 of which we'll go over in more detail in the battle guide. And finally, you can pick up Missile Resist, bonuses versus Khorne, and Immortality. And of course, as with all the Heralds of Chaos, once they reach level 15, and upon starting a new turn, they will evolve into Exalted Demons. The Herald of Slaanesh evolves into the Exalted Keeper of Secrets, and of course they maintain whatever lore you recruited the original Lord with. They have basically the same skill trees as Heralds, aside from a couple of small differences. No Locust talents, no mounts, and a couple of new top row skills that unlock you some abilities. We now come to the heroes, and first up we have the Cultists of Slaanesh. With the campaign map they can establish cults, wound enemy characters, hinder replenishment, spread corruption wherever they go, and increase mobility when embedded in an army. Similar to the Nurgle cultists, it's sometimes hard to find a real use for these guys. On the campaign map, the only really useful thing they can do is spread corruption and establish cults, but this has a large cooldown, and it's normally easier to save up and proliferate. If they're going into battle, then you'll want to increase mobility, then go right into the Yellow Tree for all kinds of stat buffs despite their less than outstanding base stats. While on the top row they can pick up their Chaos Steed mount, as well as some summons for Demonettes and Keepers of Secrets, which can be incredibly strong. Then you have Missile Resist, bonuses versus Khorne, and Immortality. And our other hero is the Allurisers. These can grab either the Lore of Slaanesh or Lore of Shadows. On the campaign map they can assault garrisons, assassinate characters, assault units, spread control in their local province, and provide training when embedded in an army. Now, depending on what you want to use these guys for, you'll pick up something different in the blue tree. If you're keeping them on the campaign map, you pretty much pick up everything except training. If they're going in battle, however, then you'll pretty much only be picking up training from the blue tree. You then want to pick up any spells that you want from either of their powerful lores. The yellow tree has some buffs to them in general combats, but I don't think this should be a priority until a little bit later on. You want to pick up one of their 3 locust skills once you reach level 13, and choose from one of the same 3 mounts that the lords have: the Steeds of Slaanesh, the Seeker Chariots, and the Exalted Chariots. And finally, you can pick up buffs for Fighting Corn, Missile Resist, and Immortality. Now we come to the commandments. Cavalcade of Dark Desires grants minus 10% construction cost for all buildings and 3% income from all buildings. Festival of Drinking and Delights grants plus 4 control, minus 40% chance of a plague spreading, and minus 20% move range for enemy armies starting their turn in the region. Revels of Eternal Pleasure grants minus 2% costs for proliferate cults faction-wide, and plus 15 growth. And Foster Cults grants 3 Slaanesh corruption locally, and plus 1 in adjacent provinces. And finally we come to the research tree, and this tree is split into 6 separate groups. Each group has 6 techs, and most of the groups require the other 5 to be researched before unlocking the 6th. Each group also has a focus, whether it's infrastructure, income, diplomacy, and of course military. I would grab some to improve your settlements first before going into military later on. This works out great, as some of those military ones require later buildings to unlock the research. And that concludes how to play Slaanesh in the campaign. If you enjoyed this video, then consider leaving it a like, and of course subscribe to see more videos like this, including the Warhammer 3 review coming on Monday, and of course the Slaanesh battle guide next Friday. Leave any questions you have in the comments below and I'll answer them as best I can. I'd like to take this time to thank all supporters of the channel, like Dominic Shamas, and of course Henry Tucker, Adam T, and XJS for their support at that Unclean Ones tier. Really can't thank each and every supporter enough. If you'd like to support the channel, then you can become a member here on YouTube, a Patreon on Patreon, or a subscriber on Twitch. Doing so gets you shoutouts at the end of videos. One more time, thank you to each and every one of you for watching, and for now, I've been COLONELDAMNEDERS, and I will see you next turn.